A 28-point plan to end the war in Ukraine, negotiated between Trump and his Russian interlocutors, has now come to light. The plan would basically require Ukraine to surrender territory, significantly reduce the size of its army, and relinquish some types of weapons. The 28-point proposal, drafted without any Ukrainian involvement, reflects the maximalist demands that the Kremlin has made throughout this war. Most of these demands in this plan, Ukraine has already long denounced as amounting to capitulation. There is no reason to believe why Ukraine would agree now. This is the latest effort by the Trump administration to reinvigorate the stalled talks in the nearly 4-year-old war. But some Ukrainian commentators also saw this proposal as a bid by Russia to press Ukraine for concessions. Significantly, it comes at a time when the government of President Volodymyr Zelensky is weakened by a high-level corruption scandal. Some of his key allies have been caught up in the scandal, where they are alleged to have profited in millions of dollars while sending Ukrainian soldiers into the battlefield. Kiev is also under growing pressure on the battlefield as Russian forces make gains in the contested eastern Donbas region. The Ukrainian military has been stretched thin, it's running out of men and morale. The White House did not comment on the contents of this latest proposal, but they say that they're always open to peace.
The war would have never happened. If I were president, the war would have never happened. I think you would agree with that. This war would never have happened if I were president. It's stupid that it happened, but it did happen. I inherited the war, and I think we're going to get it ended not too distant future.
The United States is reviving its diplomatic efforts after meetings over the summer between Ukrainian and Russian officials. There was also the Alaska summit that happened between President Trump and President Putin of Russia, but none of these meetings produced any major breakthroughs. As part of this push, the Trump administration has pressed Russia and Ukraine to present in writing what their respective terms are for a settlement, and that could become a basis for further negotiations. A delegation of senior U.S. military officials arrived in Kiev this week. They're there for talks with Ukrainian officials about how to break this impasse. Zelensky, too, is seeking to resurrect long-dormant peace talks. He met in Turkey this week with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who's offered to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. Turkey has offered Bayraktar drones to Ukraine, while at the same time sealing gas deals with Russia. Turkey has previously played host to peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, but again, no concrete breakthrough has been yielded so far. The US-Russia plan emerged from talks between Steve Witkoff, who is Trump's special envoy, and his Russian counterpart Kirill Dmitriev. A senior Ukrainian official told the New York Times that the Trump administration had informed Ukraine of these talks, but it had not sought any inputs from Kiev. The terms of this plan were unacceptable to Kiev. The proposal would require Ukraine to surrender to Russia eastern Ukraine, in fact the entire Donbas region, and that includes even those parts which are not under Russian control. Russia currently controls about 3/4 of the eastern Donbas region. At the current rate that they're advancing, Russian troops would have to fight for another 4 years to seize all of Donbas. This is research that's been put out by Deep State, which is a group which has ties with the Ukrainian military, and it closely maps the battlefield.
It is very important for Russia to do everything to really capture Pokrovsk in any format to show success on the battlefield, whether it is going to be Vovchansk or something else. They need to show success. Then they will be able to return, try to return the narrative. We told you that we will capture Donbas.
The proposed settlement would also cap the size of Ukraine's army far below its current levels. It would also recognize the Crimean Peninsula as Russian, as well as other occupied territories as Russian territory. Russia was also demanding that foreign troops be prohibited from Ukrainian-controlled territories after a ceasefire. If this were to be agreed to, then this would rule out a French and British proposal to deploy what's been called a reassurance force to stabilize security in post-war Ukraine. The settlement proposal that latest won, the 28-point proposal by Trump and his team, is similar to the one that Russia had presented in the talks in 2022. Moscow subsequently lost about half of the territory that it had captured in the initial invasion. But now, in the last few months, Russia has recaptured much of its lost territory. In fact, this year, the tide has turned in Russia's favor, as Russian forces have pierced through long-held Ukrainian positions on the battlefield. Russia is now advancing in small units into a partially surrounded city in eastern Ukraine. It's called Pokrovsk, the last remaining big city in Donetsk, which is in the eastern part of Ukraine. In fact, many analysts expect Pokrovsk to fall very soon. The Ukrainian army is strained, it is running short of material and soldiers. Increasingly, Ukraine is relying not on infantry in the trenches, but on soldiers who are flying exploding drones to slow the Russian onslaught. Russia has signaled a willingness to keep up its costly incremental advances into Ukraine so that it concedes to Russian demands to give up territory and to give up its army. And if it does, it would mean total victory for Russia. And Putin would not want to settle for anything less.